The camera cranes up Utah's Dead Horse Point. Ethan Hunt free climbs sheer sandstone, no rope, chalk dust drifting while the canyon yawns below. Wind morphs into a pounding heartbeat. A burst of white doves erupts from an inferno as rogue agent Sean Ambrose spins twin pistols. Shells twirl in slow motion. John Woo's signature, ballistic poetry, bullets doubling as love letters. Two superbikes launch, colliding midair against a gold Sidney skyline. In the freeze frame, a knife hovers a hair's breadth from Ethan's iris. Time itself inhales. A lethal virus named Chimera is hidden inside a corpse. Its antidote Bellerophon exists in only 6 vials, and every face can be borrowed by an enemy. Within 48 hours, Ethan must stop traitor Sean Ambrose from unleashing a global outbreak and save master thief Naya, who infects herself to derail the plan, or Sidney becomes humanity's 0 hour. Most viewers remember MI2 as slow-mo doves and motorbike carnage. Yet its sharpest blade is a parable about collapsing trust and identity. When any mask can clone your face, what proves you are you? Woo turns a Hollywood action sequel into a wuxia-tinged ballad of disguise, betrayal, and redemption. During production, the crew quietly shot an alternate, hopeless ending. Chimera survives, Ethan fails, and the camera lingers on Naya's final tear. Why did the studio abort it, and how did that choice steer the franchise toward heroic myth instead of tragic noir? Stay tuned. We'll exhume the lost footage and explore the darkest timeline that never hit theaters. John Woo didn't want to make a Mission Impossible sequel. Not at first. The man who redefined Hong Kong action cinema with The Killer and Hard Boiled was wary of Hollywood's machinery. He'd already tasted creative compromise with Broken Arrow and Face Slash Off. But Tom Cruise, who by then had full control of the franchise, wanted something different. Not just another spy movie. He wanted something balletic, operatic, poetic in violence. He wanted John Woo. Woo didn't just bring his signature doves and dual pistols. He brought his philosophy. To him, action isn't about explosions. It's about morality under pressure. 2 men, 2 codes, 1 choice. That's why the movie feels more like a stylized duel between tragic samurai than a Western thriller. The original screenplay, penned by Chinatown's Robert Towne, was much colder, more cerebral than spiritual. In earlier drafts, Naya was written as a disposable asset, killed off in Act 2. Ethan was colder too, all mission, no soul. But Woo fought for intimacy, for chemistry, for human stakes. He added the flamenco scene in Seville. He slowed everything down, not just in frame rate, but emotionally. And then the shoot fell apart. Originally scheduled for 80 days, production ballooned past 120. Scenes were rewritten on set. Locations fell through. The motorcycle finale? It wasn't in the script. It was born out of necessity when a location deal collapsed last minute and Woo proposed almost casually. What if the climax isn't a shootout, but a kinetic, choreographed motorcycle joust followed by a knife fight in the sand? The studio panicked. Executives begged Woo to cut the beach fight. Too long, too indulgent, too foreign. But Cruise backed him. He trained for months just to get that moment when the blade stops a centimeter from his eye, done practically without CGI. That one shot cost hundreds of thousands and nearly lost them insurance coverage. Even the score was in flux. Hans Zimmer composed late into post-production. He layered tribal drums with haunting chants from Lisa Gerrard, creating something mythic rather than mechanical. It's a spy film that sounds like a funeral mass. There was a cut where Ethan fails, where Naya walks into the sea, infected, too late for the cure. It tested poorly. Audiences hated it. Paramount executives overrode Woo and Cruise, demanding a reshoot and redemptive ending. They gave it one. But the ghost of that version still haunts the final edit. The movie we got is a compromise, a collision between tragedy and triumph, idealism and business. And yet, maybe that tension is exactly what makes it last. Every John Woo film is a dance. But in Mission Impossible 2, the choreography isn't just in the action. It's in the way the camera moves like a character of its own. Look at the sequence where Ethan watches Naya walk into Ambrose's mansion in slow motion. The lens doesn't just follow her. It hesitates. It breathes. There's a tremble in the framing, as if the camera itself doubts whether she's coming back. That hesitation is deliberate. We use his camera motion not just to show action, but to show fear, doubt, longing. In a Hollywood franchise known for high-tech stunts and precision, MI2 does something deeply radical. It lingers. That's not a technical error, it's an emotional strategy. Color plays the same game. Look at the shift from Seville to Sydney. Seville is awash in golds, reds, and candlelit warmth. Sydney is cold blues, surgical whites, steel grays. The palette tracks the descent from passion to pathology, from romance to biological warfare. This is not just a global mission, it's an infection narrative. A love story where chemistry and contagion become indistinguishable. And it's not just the leads who drive that tension. Take Hugh Stamp, Ambrose's right-hand man. On paper, he's just a henchman. But Wu shoots him like a jaded priest, watching Ambrose's sins, silently judging, yet enabling every one of them. He becomes the audience's proxy, caught in the slow-motion collapse of a man's morality. Even Biosite's lab design tells a story. The headquarters isn't a gleaming tech fortress. It's sterile, almost funereal. The lighting is flat. The glass is matte. The corridors resemble hospital wings, not military bases. That's no accident. Wu isn't staging a battle, he's staging a dissection. We're not watching heroes win. We're watching humanity be picked apart, vial by vial. And the motorcycle chase? It isn't about escape. It's a ritual. Two men riding headlong into mutual annihilation. Wu frames it like a duel between mirror images, Ethan in black, Ambrose in gray. Both stunt doubles look almost identical in silhouette. The message is clear. In the world of masks and betrayals, good and evil aren't opposites. They're reflections. That ambiguity sits at the heart of the film's most famous motif, the latex mask. By this point in the franchise, the face swap gag is expected. But I2 twists it. Wu lingers just a second longer on the tearing of the prosthetic. The audience knows it's coming, but the moment still stings. Because here, the masks aren't clever. They're tragic. They don't just conceal, they consume. Identity isn't just what you hide. It's what you sacrifice. The film's emotional core, though, is Naya. She's not a femme fatale. She's not a damsel. She's something rare in action cinema, a woman who chooses to suffer to buy the world more time. And Wu frames her suffering with almost religious reverence. When she injects herself with chimera, the camera goes silent. Her face is still. The light dims. It's not a medical act. It's a sacrifice. The movie doesn't exploit her, it mourns her. This, more than any gadget or gunfight, is what makes I2 strange and strangely resonant. Beneath the operatic visuals and over-the-top sequences, the film is asking a very quiet question. What are we willing to lose to protect what we love? And when the world wears masks, how do you know if the person beside you is still real? The structure of I2 is deceptively linear. On the surface, it moves like a ticking clock thriller, virus, deadline, rescue. But look closely and you'll see something stranger, less like espionage, more like myth. Wu doesn't build tension the way Western thrillers do. He doesn't escalate by complication. He escalates by repetition. A gesture, a glance, a betrayal. They echo again and again until the pattern becomes ritual. Time is fluid in this film. Scenes don't rush to their endpoints. They spiral. The flamenco moment in Seville could have been a 3-minute plot device, get Ethan and Naya to meet. Instead, it stretches, breathes. It becomes symbolic courtship. The music swells. Eyes lock. The dance is barely danced. But the emotion, immense. The entire mission, stealing a vial of death, hinges on something that feels more like poetry than plot. That rhythm is deeply rooted in Wu's Hong Kong sensibility. He once said, "In the East, we make movies about feeling. In the West, they make movies about plot." I2 tries to do both. It tells a story about global bioterror while secretly performing a meditation on love, honor, and loss. The contradiction confounded critics at the time. Many dismissed it as style over substance. But perhaps they were expecting a map, and Wu was drawing a labyrinth. Compared to Brian De Palma's tightly coiled Mission, Impossible, 1996, which is all surveillance paranoia and noir mistrust, Wu's sequel opens wide. It stretches into operatic scope. There's less plot convolution, more spiritual crisis. In De Palma's film, masks hide lies. In Wu's, masks hide longing. The shift is seismic. This isn't a spy thriller. It's a tragedy with a flamethrower. Wu also deconstructs the franchise's own mythology. Take the scene where Ethan rips off his latex disguise in front of Ambrose. The audience knows what's happening. They've seen it before. But Wu slows the moment until it becomes almost meditative. It's not a twist. It's a confession. A reckoning with performance itself. In a world built on deception, what does it mean to reveal your true face? Film critics at the time didn't agree on what to make of this tonal hybrid. Some praised its operatic ambition. Others called it bloated, overindulgent, too stylized to care about. Roger Ebert saw the love story as hollow. But Susan Lasagna of USA Today called it visually lush, thematically daring. It was one of the first big-budget American blockbusters to be fully shaped by an East Asian auteur, and the culture clash showed. That debate still lingers today. Is M.I. a misunderstood masterpiece or an overglossed relic of early 2000s excess? To some, it's a fever dream of doves and fire. To others, it's a cry for sincerity in an increasingly ironic genre. Perhaps it's both. Perhaps it had to be. And if you track its legacy forward through M.I.'s emotional recalibration to Fallout's moral grays, you can see the fingerprints of Woo's experiment. The franchise never went back to his aesthetic. But it never forgot his question either. What does it cost to be real in a world built on illusion? At the center of Mission Impossible 2 is a biological weapon. But this isn't just a MacGuffin. Chimera is more than a plot device. It's a metaphor for everything the film is actually afraid of: invisible threats, globalized corruption, and trust turned toxic. The virus comes from a pharmaceutical company, not a foreign enemy. That detail matters. Biosite, the company manufacturing Chimera, is clean, Western corporate. No accents. No caricatures. No bunkers in Eastern Europe. The villainy is internal, civilized, clinical. It wears suits and signs contracts. And that tells you what kind of world this film believes we're already living in. Chimera isn't just a disease. It's commodified death. Biosite wants to profit from a cure it already secretly controls. Ambrose wants to fast-track the outbreak so he can sell that cure on the black market. The moral structure here isn't just broken, it's inverted. The people who are supposed to heal the world are incentivized to hurt it. The system doesn't fail. It functions exactly as designed. That's not fiction. That's commentary. It makes sense that Woo, a director raised in post-war Hong Kong, would view the West this way. His films are filled with institutions that hollow out the people inside them. Loyalty gets weaponized. Duty gets monetized. In M.I.2, the IMF doesn't feel like a patriotic agency. It feels like a stage. People put on faces, perform roles, save lives, but also sacrifice pawns. Naya is never treated as a full agent. She's bait, framed in slow motion, then discarded when convenient. That isn't just narrative oversight. It's part of the film's diagnosis. The core conflict isn't Ethan versus Ambrose. It's integrity versus cynicism. Ethan is the last romantic in a world of mercenaries. He believes love is real, that people can be saved, that masks should come off. Ambrose believes the opposite, that people are disposable, and that identity is just a tool. Woo's camera turns that into visual language. Ethan moves fluidly with grace. Ambrose jerks, lunges, unravels. They're not just fighting over a virus. They're fighting over the soul of what it means to believe in anything. When Naya injects herself with Chimera, it's not a plot twist. It's an act of refusal. She won't be used. She chooses death over becoming a pawn. And the film mourns that choice like a funeral hymn. There's a whole section where she simply walks the streets of Sydney, infected, uncertain if help is coming. No dialogue, no music, just wind, faces passing, time slowing. It's one of the quietest moments in the franchise and one of the most devastating. In a film full of masks, it's her most unguarded moment. And the fact that this sequence was nearly cut from the final edit says everything about the industry's discomfort with watching a woman choose agency through sacrifice rather than survival. Even the climax plays out more like a parable than a showdown. A duel in the sand. No gadgets. No backup. Just two men, stripped of tech and titles, trying to kill each other with their hands. Ethan doesn't kill Ambrose from rage. He does it because there's no other way. And when it's over, there's no speech. No celebration. Just silence and a desperate race to find the woman who chose to suffer so others wouldn't have to. The deeper you dig, the more M.I.2 starts to look like a dystopia disguised as a blockbuster. It's a story where identities are stolen, systems are rigged, and the only noble thing left is choosing not to play the game. In that light, the slow motion, the operatic tone, the mythic framing, it's not excess. It's lament. It's Wu mourning the loss of meaning in a world where even heroes wear masks that don't belong to them. When Mission Impossible 2 hit theaters in May 2000, it divided the room. Some audiences were entranced by the spectacle, the romance, the choreography of destruction. Others recoiled. It didn't feel like a spy movie. It didn't follow the rules. It dared to pause. To many, it felt indulgent. To others, it felt honest. The film made over $500 million worldwide. It became the highest-grossing movie of the year. But for all its financial dominance, it left behind a cultural confusion. Fans who wanted puzzles got poetry. Fans who expected gadgets got grief. And those who looked closer saw something Hollywood rarely lets through, a story about systemic betrayal made by someone who had lived it. One of the film's most unsettling choices is how it distributes responsibility. There is no big bad pulling the strings. No omnipotent evil. Just layers of institutional rot. Biosite creates a virus to boost profit margins. IMF uses a woman as a human tracking device. Ambrose may be the antagonist, but he's not the anomaly. He's the product. That's why the film's emotional core feels so off-kilter. The violence is beautiful. The systems are cold. The hero wins, but it doesn't feel like a victory. There's no triumph. Just cleanup. The woman survives, but only after walking through hell alone. And no one is held accountable for letting it happen. That tension hits differently in a post-COVID world. Watching MI2 today, its central image, a woman knowingly infected, walking through a city as time runs out, lands not as fantasy but prophecy. The anxiety about trust, science, bodies, and who gets left behind during crisis, it's no longer abstract. It's familiar. So who's responsible for the moral collapse the movie depicts? Is it Ambrose for executing the plan? Biosite for inventing the means? IMF for manipulating both sides? Or the larger system that sees all of it as strategic risk? And what does Ethan do about it? He saves the girl. He stops the plan. But he never questions the framework that made it possible. That silence is deafening. And that, more than any slow-motion gunfight, is the film's boldest accusation. The system can be saved from catastrophe, but not from itself. The film never explicitly indicts IMF, but its indifference echoes loudly. It asks you to consider, what does it mean when an agency with unlimited reach uses people as chess pieces, then walks away without consequence? Wu doesn't answer that question. He leaves it there unresolved. But the way he frames Naya, in soft light, wide lenses alone, tells you where his sympathy lies. She's not a side character. She's the axis around which the story spins. And she's the one who's forced to bear the cost of everyone else's choices. That's the real subversion of MI2. It's a film where the man who saves the world gets the credit, but the woman who sacrificed everything is the moral center. And the audience? Split. Some saw her as a plot device. Others saw her as the most human thing in the movie. 20 years later, as moral ambiguity becomes the default mode of modern cinema, MI2 looks less like an outlier and more like a blueprint. Because here's the final question the film quietly slips in while the explosions rage. If every institution uses masks to protect itself, how do we know which face is worth trusting? When Mission Impossible 2 opened in 2000, the concept of a man-made virus designed for profit felt like dystopian fiction. Biosite was a cautionary construct, a thought experiment about the dangers of privatized science and amoral capitalism. But fast forward 2 decades, and that fiction has metastasized into something more recognizable. We now live in a world where medical patents are as politically charged as nuclear codes. Where pharmaceutical giants with government ties negotiate cure access behind closed doors. Where viruses don't just threaten bodies, they expose the machinery of global inequality. The film's scenario, a company creating both a disease and its cure, then manipulating markets to profit, is no longer hypothetical. It's history. Consider the opioid epidemic, the insulin price wars, the COVID-19 vaccine rollout, where geopolitics often dictated availability more than urgency. MI2 didn't just imagine corruption in biotech. It guessed with eerie precision how a life-or-death commodity could become the most valuable bargaining chip on Earth. And it goes deeper. The idea of identity theft through latex masks may have seemed campy in 2000. Today we have deepfakes, voice cloning, real-time facial replacement powered by neural nets. MI2's face swap tech was once sci-fi flair. Now it's a Snapchat filter and national security risk. But the real legacy of the film isn't technological. It's psychological. It predicted something more insidious, the erosion of trust. Not just between agents or lovers, but between citizens and institutions. When Naya walks the streets of Sydney infected and alone, it doesn't feel like Hollywood anymore. It feels like lockdown, like isolation, like the quiet question we all asked: if I disappear, will anyone come? The film's deepest warning wasn't about the virus. It was about how we respond to crisis. The passivity of power, the expendability of individuals, the normalization of emotional distance as operational necessity. And that's what makes too eerily prophetic. It showed a world where life-saving technology is gate-kept, where heroism is romanticized but rarely rewarded, and where the line between mission and manipulation is so thin it might as well be latex. So what must change? First, transparency. In too, no one knows who holds the power. Biosite, IMF, Ambrose, they all operate in shadows. And shadows breed rot. In reality, when public health decisions are opaque, fear rushes in to fill the vacuum. The film implicitly argues for a different model, one where knowledge isn't a weapon but a safeguard. Second, accountability. Ambrose dies. Biosite survives. IMF walks away. That moral asymmetry mirrors our own era. CEOs who oversaw deadly crises retire rich. Whistleblowers are punished. The virus always has a name, but the system that allowed it rarely does. Third, empathy. Ethan saves Naya, yes, but only after the damage is done. If the film has one major failure, it's that her pain is aestheticized rather than confronted. But that flaw isn't Wu's alone, it's the genre's. And maybe ours. We cheer the mission, but we flinch from the human cost. too leaves us with a haunting image, a world where masks are everywhere, not just on faces but in systems, in relationships, in language itself. It asks whether survival is possible in a world that sees everything, remembers nothing, and feels even less. That question is no longer cinematic. It's civilizational. It's easy to forget how much Mission Impossible 2 changed the texture of early 2000s action cinema. The film didn't just remix spy tropes with balletic violence. It redefined what blockbuster cool looked like. After its release, every action trailer suddenly had slow-motion stares, operatic music cues, and one signature element: the hero walking away from fire in absolute silence. But more subtly, it ushered in an era of stylized fatalism. Films like Equilibrium, 2002, Ultraviolet, 2006, and even The Island, 2005, borrowed its aesthetic language: men in black with moral uncertainty, women as sacrificial emblems of truth, science gone cold. It wasn't just style. It was worldview, beauty in ruin, action as ritual, identity as costume. In the realm of video games, titles like Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, 2001, echoed its themes: false faces, corrupt institutions, biotech paranoia, and the collapse of individual agency under systemic manipulation. too may not have invented the template, but crystallized it for a Western audience. The world is a machine of masks. And in academia? Quiet ripples. Film studies departments still wrestle with the Wu paradox. How can something so visually maximalist contain such bleak subtext? Aesthetics journals have dissected its use of liminal lighting, especially the Sydney scenes, as metaphors for bodily erosion. Meanwhile, cultural critics revisit it whenever new biotech scandals break. Suddenly, too doesn't feel dated. It feels uncomfortably accurate. It also birthed memes, though fewer than other films. Its sincerity doesn't lend itself well to irony. Still, the knife near the eye shot and white doves in slow motion became shorthand for over-the-top intensity. In film schools and cinephile forums, you'll often hear it referenced as the moment Hollywood tried to understand Wu and gave up too soon. For those who want to explore beyond the film, here are 4 cinematic deep cuts that reflect its DNA. The Killer, 1989, John Woo's own Hong Kong magnum opus. A hitman, a witness, and a redemption arc soaked in bullets and blood. It's too stripped of espionage, but twice as emotional. Face/Off, 1997, a spiritual prequel to too. This film literalizes identity lost via face-swapping technology. What too implies, Face/Off dramatizes. Time Crimes, 2007, a Spanish thriller about loops, masks, and moral disintegration. No tech, just existential dread. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, 2011, for contrast. All the spy work, none of the flash. It shows what too avoids: the bureaucratic coldness of betrayal. And for readers, here are 4 books that deepen the ethical and psychological frameworks. Kazuo Ishiguro, Never Let Me Go. A meditation on bodies as commodities and love as rebellion. If Naya had a novel, this would be its shadow. Donna Haraway, The Cyborg Manifesto. The academic root system beneath I2's themes, body, technology, and the fiction of individualism. Yuval Noah Harari, Homo Deus. A non-fiction leap into what happens when biotech becomes the new godhead. I2 was warning us. Harari maps it. Margaret Atwood, Oryx and Crake. A bioengineering dystopia wrapped in grief and satire. Atwood and Wu never met, but they speak the same language of ruin. What unites these works isn't just theme. It's tone. They're sincere in the face of absurdity. They're tragic without cynicism. Like I2, they suggest that perhaps the most dangerous thing in a world full of false faces isn't the mask, it's forgetting there's a real person underneath. There's a moment near the end of Mission Impossible 2 that lingers, not because it's explosive, but because it isn't. Naya Nordhoff stands at the edge of a cliff, infected, abandoned, unsure if she'll die alone. She walks slowly, barely present. The city behind her goes on, indifferent. This is not the shot you remember. Not the explosion. Not the knife flickering a centimeter from Ethan's eye. But it's the one that matters. It's the face that stares back at us when the mask drops. And it's here that the film quietly converges with Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. On the surface, the two couldn't be more different. One is a bombastic spy thriller about viruses and vengeance, the other a quiet dystopian elegy set in an English countryside. But beneath their surfaces, they're twin meditations on what it means to be used, repurposed, and erased in a world that only sees your function. In Ishiguro's novel, human clones are raised for the sole purpose of donating their organs. They live calm, restricted lives in boarding schools and group homes, never questioning their fate, because they're not allowed to imagine one. Their rebellion is not loud. It's the way they remember a touch, a song, a look. They don't escape the system. They carry it in their bodies, all the way to the end. In I2, Naya is not a clone. But she is selected, groomed, redeployed. A woman with a past is turned into a tool for a mission. Her emotional agency is rarely addressed. Her suffering is stylized, scored, stretched. And yet, in that suffering, she becomes the moral heart of the film, a person who resists utility by choosing sacrifice. Like Kathy H. in Never Let Me Go, Naya asserts her humanity not by winning, but by refusing to be reduced. Both works ask a chilling question. What happens to those we deem useful when we're done using them? Naya is not given a weapon. She is not given a line to rally the audience. She is given a syringe and silence. Her bravery isn't constructed through montage. It's carved into the quiet. The film mourns her more than it empowers her. And that for some was a narrative flaw. But through the lens of Ishiguro's fiction, it becomes a philosophical statement. Because what Never Let Me Go makes us feel, in that terrible, still way, is the weight of knowing you were never free. That your life, however vivid in memory, was always already spoken for. Kathy remembers the way the wind felt on her arms, the music playing in the dorm, a boy's face once. All that tenderness, wasted on a body pre-scheduled for expiration. This is the subtext of Mission Impossible 2 that its critics missed. Amid the slow motion and spectacle, is telling a story not about saving the world, but about how easily a human life becomes collateral. Ethan's mission is not just to stop Ambrose. It's to see Naya as something more than a role, not a lover. Not a lure, but a person, a whole person, and even then, he only barely succeeds. In one of the final chapters of Never Let Me Go, Kathy visits the abandoned school where she was raised. She walks the grounds, listens to the silence, tries to believe there was something sacred in the way they were once treated, even if it was always a lie. The moment mirrors Naya's cliffside scene, a single woman, surrounded by a world that no longer sees her, remembering a time when her existence felt like it might have meant something. Both scenes refuse closure. That is their power. Because stories like these, dystopian, operatic, tragic, aren't designed to comfort. They are designed to disturb the equation. In a world where efficiency is worshipped and emotional labor is invisible, what does it mean to be human? Not just alive, but irreplaceable? I2, for all its glamour and velocity, whispers the same answer Ishiguro does. Humanity is not found in what we do. It's found in what we endure. That endurance is cinematic in Wu's hands. He makes pain beautiful, turns sacrifice into ballet. But beauty can be dangerous, too. It can obscure. We may cheer as Ethan rides through fire to reach Naya, but we must not forget she already walked into that fire alone. This is where Never Let Me Go becomes not just a lens, but a corrective. It strips away the choreography. It shows the same sacrifice in a whisper. A soft-spoken woman caring for a dying friend. A cassette tape held against a chest. The slow realization that no one is coming to stop the system, only to carry it forward. And it asks us, when did you last really look at the people around you? When did you last ask what they were carrying, and whether they had a choice? Naya is a rare figure in action cinema, a woman whose agency is exercised not through power, but through refusal. She refuses to be a pawn. She refuses to survive by betraying others. And ultimately, she refuses to die quietly. Her walk through Sidney is her version of Kathy's walk through Hailsham. A farewell to innocence. A confrontation with the world's indifference. And yet, both survive. Briefly. Incomplete. But alive. Kathy ends her story in solitude, waiting for the system to claim her. Naya's fate is left ambiguous, save, yes, but silenced. Erased from future sequels. Her story ends not with a bang, but with a vanishing. In the language of franchise logic, she is non-essential. In the logic of Never Let Me Go, she is the only thing that mattered. So, what do we do with these two women, one from a spy thriller, the other from a dystopian novel, both sacrificed, both forgotten? We remember them. We let them reshape the way we watch stories about heroes and missions and masks. We ask where the human cost is hidden. We ask what labor is left unspoken. We ask who gets to be remembered and who gets rewritten out of the frame. Because the deeper lesson I, too, and Never Let Me Go share isn't about saving the world. It's about recognizing the faces that quietly hold it together. The ones who are never credited, never honored, but without whom the world would simply fall apart. That's what Wu saw. That's what Ishiguro grieved. And that's what we, as viewers, must carry forward. Because if we don't, if we keep cheering for the mask and forgetting the face, then we are the system. The rot. The silence before the tear falls. So maybe it's time we looked again. Not at the explosions. Not at the twist. But at the moment when someone who wasn't supposed to matter, did. In the end, as Kathy H. says quietly, almost to herself. I just waited a bit, then turned back to the car, to drive off to wherever it was I was supposed to be. And as Naya walks through Sidney, infected alone, wind in her hair and time running out, she says nothing. But we hear the same thing. The question is, do we still remember?